Okay, we're gonna go on over here. We're going to step away from the stage a little bit and come over to kind of a nice quiet corner by the fire here in our little tavern. And we will say to you, welcome, welcome everybody to Monster Monday. My name is DM Gallibond, and we are here for Monster Monday on the 14th of February 2022. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Hope you had a wonderful Valentine's Day. Tonight we are going to take a look at a monster that you might consult to find out a little something about who's going to be in your love life. Well, I suppose you could consult them for this, but they might get a little annoyed with you if you came to them with that kind of question. This is the Archaic, and the Archaic comes to us out of Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos. It is one of the most recent source books to be released by Wizards of the Coast for 5th edition. Came out late last year. Alright, and this is an image of the Archaic, and as you can see, it's a massive, massive creature. It dwarfs over all of the trees and everything. I mean, it's sitting down, and it looks like those pine trees, maybe are as tall as its hand is from, tip of the fingers to about the middle of the palm. So it is a big, 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 big monster. Now, Archaics were a monster created for Magic the Gathering's Strixhaven School of Mages expansion, which came out earlier in 2021. And in a text of several cards, the Archaics are referenced as keepers of ancient knowledge. So mages seek out ancient beings known as the Archaics for their boundless knowledge of history and magic, dispensed in only cryptic metaphors. So, however, in the official fiction for the expansion from Strixhaven, they are barely referenced, and they are never met. There's never a scene that includes these Archaics. They don't appear as any characters. They are just sort of off stage. Oh yeah, those Archaics over there. Somebody may go to them from time to time. Now, Archaics do appear in the artwork of two cards, Teachings of the Archaics and Wandering, and the double-sided card, which is Wandering Archaic on one side and Explore the Vast Lands. And the Archaic appears on both sides of those cards. So it wasn't until Strixhaven migrated to D&D and Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos, that we learned a little bit more about them. And this is an image from of an Archaic. It is the image that they use for the monster in the Strixhaven Curriculum of Chaos. But originally, this is detail from a Magic the Gathering card called Teachings of the Archaics from Strixhaven, the School of Mages expansion. And the artwork is by Luis Lasahido. It's one of the nice things about the Magic cards. They always tell you who painted the card, and in the source books for D&D, it's not always easy to find out who created a particular image. Now, this is a picture. I'm sorry it's a little bit grainy. It's the best picture I could find on a large scale, doing a search online. But this is a picture of Teachings of the Archaics. And you can see the Archaic kind of sitting over there, and there's the supplicant standing much closer with his or her back to us, that is asking a question. And this is a sorcery card. So if opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw 2, draw 3 cards if the opponent has at least 4 more cards in hand than you. And a description of the monster as it comes out of 5th edition from the Strixhaven sourcebook is, Archaics are towering, multi-armed creatures overflowing with magic. Despite their solitude, Archaics carry vast understanding of magic and the world's history, as well as the ability to warp the fabric of the world around them. So they are very big, very powerful. The only artwork we get from official sources depicts one or more archaics that have 8 arms. So one time they're at rest, and another time seeming to draw something through a portal in the sky above the landscape, which we will see in a few slides. In any case, they are enormous dwarfing trees and high bluffs, and even when seated on the ground, as in this. Alright, and then here is a image of the Wandering Archaic. And this Archaic is walking across the landscape. And again, you see there's this forest on these mountains, and they're just dwarfing over it. So this is an avatar creature. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell if you choose new target, or if you choose new targets for the copy. And this little symbol here means if you pay 3 mana, you can flip it over and have it be what's on the other side of the card, which we'll see again a little bit later. So now let's talk a little bit about lore surrounding these archaics. So sages who seek out archaics for their knowledge receive confusing and often contradictory answers to questions. If a supplicant successfully unwinds the tangle, the answer they seek is revealed. So, in truth, archaics are the reincarnated souls of the oracles of Strixhaven. So when an oracle dies, their soul travels back through time to the explosion of magic that brought the founder dragons into being. In that outrush of creative force, the oracle's soul can be caught in the tide and clad in the very substance of the world, becoming an archaic. Because their knowledge cuts across the flow of time, archaics are careful how much they reveal to mortals, and thus tend to speak in riddles. So, all of that is explanation that comes out of Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos. That was never written down anywhere in a published form for Magic the Gathering. It could be that this was very well out of the notes of the people who designed these monsters for Magic the Gathering, but the first time it was actually printed in a source and published in a source by Wizards of the Coast was in this D&D campaign, or setting / campaign, whatever, for Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos. Alright, and now here we go, our guy is sitting back down again. Archaics in the Strixhaven campaign, they never appear as part of the campaign. They are referenced in expository chapters of Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos, in order to help flesh out the setting of the world where the adventure takes place. So the only time they're referenced in the campaign is in an alternate ending scenario if the PCs fail in their goal to stop the antagonist from achieving his goal. So it's speculated that Archaics and the Founder Dragons may help the PCs try to deal with the fallout of their failure in the campaign. Thus, it's entirely up to the DM if they ever appear in a game based on Strixhaven or not. So, once again, this is our same view of this. Now, when we talk about creatures in D&D, every creature has to have a creature type. And what they chose for the Archaic is they chose to make it a Celestial. So you can kind of see where this comes from. The Celestial, or the Archaic, is a being that's reincarnated soul of an oracle. There's all this timey-wimey stuff that's going on where they go back to the outburst of magic that created the founder dragons in the first place. So they just said, okay, well, we'll throw it in there and make them a Celestial. So they're creatures native to the upper planes. Many are servants of deities employed by messengers or agents to mortal realm and throughout the planes. Good by nature, so the exceptional Celestial who strays from a good alignment is a horrifying rarity. They include angels, quaddles, and pegasi. Alright, and so now we're going to go take a look at the mechanical features of the Archaic and a potential influence. Now, I say a potential influence, and this is really a stretch. It's really, really, really a stretch. Remember, if you weeks ago when we talked about Sploogoth Returned, I said that a possible influence for him were these really super high level monsters that no matter what you do, you can't kill. People like Strahd, people like Acererak. Yes, you can destroy their form, but you never really kill them. You destroy them for a while. And because even in the case of Strahd, Barovia as a demiplane is so tied to Strahd, and Strahd is so tied to that demiplane that even if you go there and you kill him, might be a decade, might be a century, might be 50 years later, something like that, Strahd's going to come back again. And he's going to resume and be just as powerful and the same ruler of that place all over again. Same thing with Acererak. Acererak is a crafty and wily villain, and you can try to kill him everywhere that, or you try to kill him anywhere that you want to, but he's got ways of coming back. He's got connections. So you can't kill him and keep him dead. So now that was an example of a super high level potential influence on a very low level monster in Sploogoth. Here we have the reverse being true. The best kind of influence I could think of, I was originally thinking of Sphinx, but Sphinx doesn't quite fit because the Sphinx tells riddles, but they're not really revealing secrets of the universe. They're usually guardians of physical things. And so an oracle from the mythic Odysseys of Theos, they seem to be somebody that's a little bit more akin to what an archaic might be. So let's go take a look at the oracle and see a little bit about how they and the archaic are alike and then how they're different. Well, first of all, the oracle's a humanoid, and it's a relatively low CR monster. It's a CR 4 rating. So armor class 15, 44 hit points, fairly, slightly above average stat block, but nothing to write home about. They have innate spellcasting, Eldritch Touch, and then they have this reaction, Divine Insight, which is another thing that kind of touches on what oracles do, or what archaics do. They 3 times a day they can force an ally or an opponent that they can see anywhere on the battlefield to make an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, either with advantage or with disadvantage. So that's what oracles do, and they come from the mythic Odysseys of Theos, which again, that's another transition or translation from a Magic the Gathering release to D&D. Now the archaic, on the other hand, the archaic is a gargantuan celestial, and it's a CR 18 monster, so it's a much higher level monster. And this guy has a pretty impressive stat block in everything except for dexterity. So a stat block that's on par with a lot of very powerful dragons, for instance. Because dragons, for all their power, all their size, they usually don't have great dexterity, just because they're so big. Armor class of 20, 245 hit points. They are resistant to force, immune to poison and psychic damage, and immune to a whole bunch of different immunities, or a whole bunch of different conditions, I should say. They're enigmatic mind, so their minds can't be read, and you can communicate telepathically with the archaic only if it allows it. Magic can't determine whether the archaic is lying. It's got legendary resistance, unusual nature, so it doesn't require food, air, drink, or sleep. And multi-attack, it makes 2 force strike attacks. And that's a melee or ranged spell attack, plus 14 to hit. Deals 19 or deals 2d10 plus 8 force damage, and the target is pulled up to 10 feet toward the Archaic or pushed 10 feet away as the Archaic chooses. But then here's another thing that it can do. Gravity shift. We're going to talk about gravity shift in just a moment, along with some other abilities that it has. So, gravity shift recharges on a 5 or 6. The Archaic reverses gravity for 1 creature it can see within 100 feet. Creature must succeed on a DC 22 Wisdom save or fall 100 feet upward. The falling creature encounters solid objects such as ceiling. It strikes the object as it would during a downward fall. The creature reaches the top of the area without striking anything. It hovers there until the start of the Archaic's next turn, at which time gravity returns to normal and the creature falls. Okay, I already know you have some players sitting at your table going, oh yes, well I know how I can get out around this. Not so fast, my friend. Spell casting, it just can do some, kind of divination type things, detect magic, divination, sending. But then it does have 2 pretty interesting abilities, banishment and force cage. So banishment, it can send somebody to a demi-plane and get them out of the battlefield for up to a minute. Force cage, it can just, put somebody in a cage and they can't do anything about it. Teleport to an unoccupied space within 120 feet. So now, here's something where when they created this monster, they did a really good job of reflecting what the monster does in Magic Gathering. Now, you remember in that Magic card, it says, if somebody casts a spell, you can pay some mana and create a duplicate of that spell and then target somebody else with it. Well, this thing has, as a reaction spell, Mimicry, once per day. Immediately after a creature the Archaic can see casts a spell of 5th level or lower, must make a DC 22 Charisma save, or the Archaic immediately casts the same spell at the same level, requiring no material components and choosing the spell's target. So you try to hit it with a fireball, the Archaic immediately casts a fireball at a target of its choosing. So legendary actions. Archaic can take 3 legendary actions, choosing from the options below. Now, remember the thing about legendary action is it happens at the end of another creature's turn. This is something important to keep in mind. Now, they can do a force strike, they can do that teleport thing, boop, 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 around the battlefield, or they can do unravel magic. Costs them 2 actions. The Archaic targets 1 creature it can see within 120 feet of itself. Target must succeed on a DC 22 Constitution save or take 35 force damage, and each spell of 5th level or lower on the target ends. Do you see the connection yet? If you don't, we're going to spell it out when we tell you how to use this monster as a DM. Alright, so with that, we are going to go back and take a look at the at our slides again. And so if we want to use Archaics in encounters, so how would we create a hard or challenging encounter with these creatures for a party of 5 PCs by level? So we just said the Archaic's a CR 18 monster. If your party is level 12 to 14, going up against one of these by itself is a hard encounter. Level 15 to 17, it becomes a medium encounter. To make it a hard encounter for a level 17 party, you can add 1 diva to the battlefield. And at level 18 to 20, it becomes an easy encounter. And for a level 20 party, you can add 1 Kirin to the encounter. Now, if you are a player and you're going to fight against a Archaic, well, you should take that gravity reversal into account and get Featherfall. So an Archaic can reverse gravity on a creature within 100 feet and throw it 100 feet into the air. Then it lets gravity become normal again and the target falls. So use only high-level spells. I mean, if you're high enough level to fight one of these things, you got access to fairly high-level spells. They can reflexively cast any spell of 5th level or lower that someone nearby casts using its own attack bonus and spell save DC. Remember, it's a legendary foe, so they get both legendary resistance and legendary actions. Legendary resistance is that quality that says, oh, somebody did something to me. I need to make a saving throw. Whoops, I failed the saving throw on the die. No, I didn't. Legendary resistance. I choose to succeed on the saving throw instead. So that's the legendary resistance in effect. All right, now you're behind the screen. You have one of these things, and your party has foolishly decided to attack it. So what are you going to do? Here's an opener to use against the party. Do the Gravity Shift / Unravel Magic combo. So on the Archaic's first turn, use Gravity Shift to throw an annoying PC into the air. Then, as the first legendary action after the next creature goes, use Unravel Magic to target the falling creature and remove the Featherfall effect that's probably on it. So even if you simplify the math as a DM and you say, okay, Featherfall 60 feet around, you do that, you've fallen 60 feet, Unravel Magic goes off, so now you fall 40 feet and you take 4d6 falling damage. And then that means that that creature then falls and takes it, or another member of the party has to burn another reaction and use Featherfall to stop that falling creature from hitting the ground again. So that's a great combo that you can use, and every time that that Unravel Magic recharges, wait, is it the Unravel Magic or is it the other one that okay, yeah, every time the or Gravity Shift, I'm sorry, every time Gravity Shift recharges, then you go and you just do that again. So if you like mathing during combat as a DM and you really want to annoy your players, remember Featherfall is 60 feet per round, so divide 60 by the number of initiatives in combat to determine how far the PC fell, then subtract that from 100 to calculate the true falling damage. Okay, so let's just say you have 10 creatures on the battlefield, 10 initiative counts. So your the Archaic goes, and then another creature goes right behind it, and the Archaic uses that Unravel Magic. Well, there's 10 initiative counts, so divide 100 by 10. That means that when Unravel Magic happened, that PC had fallen only 10 feet. So now they're going to take 9d6 falling damage. So that's why I say you do that if you really want to annoy your players, because that way you can get more falling damage out of that little trick. So Unravel Magic is a great legendary action to use on any PC that has a magical buff effect from a cleric or bard, or a potion or an item where that effect is one of a 5th level spell or lower. And of course, teleport liberally around the battlefield to frustrate melee PCs that try to deal direct damage to the Archaic. So just, you know, that teleport is one legendary action. The Unravel Magic is 2 legendary actions. So you can attack, teleport, and Unravel Magic every round with an Archaic. It's really, really, really is going to get annoying for your players after a while trying to deal with one of these guys. Alright, so where would we find an Archaic in a campaign? So, as I mentioned, they don't even appear in the Strixhaven campaign, and they're deadly to any party below Tier 3. So if you use them anything like they're portrayed, they will probably be sought for insights on some mystical question instead of fought in combat, unless, of course, you're running sort of an evil campaign, or if you need a monster, the Archaic fits the bill, but you need it to be an antagonist. So maybe it's an Archaic is working for the bad guy, and for the antagonist of your campaign, and your party has to go and they have to take out the Archaic because of help that it's been giving to your bad guy. So another option is you can use some kind of souped up guardian sphinx that poses cryptic clues and riddles to a party for access to some powerful magic item or resource. So the party fails to answer correctly, that might trigger a combat. Just make sure whatever Archaic is guarding is worth the trouble of fighting such a monster. You'll really, really, really annoy your players in a bad way if all they find is a wand of smiles and a few hundred gold pieces after having to fight one of these things. It's like, what? This thing was guarding? Ah! DM! Oh, shake my fist at you, DM. I mean, it might be fun for you. It'd be annoying for them. Especially if they really get beat up badly, or if one of the PCs winds up dying in a fight. So we fought this thing just for a wand of smiles? Alright, so now let's take a look at reskinning. So, reskinning an Archaic. The stat block here would be a good template for some kind of Titan in a homebrew campaign world. So they're not quite as powerful as gods, but they definitely rank right up there with the power of several of the ancient dragons, several of the weaker ancient dragons. Their lore of knowledge from the beginnings of time could make finding one of them to ask a question worthy of a late campaign arc in and of itself. So there's something troubling the world. We know of this oracle beyond Snow Peak Mountains. You have to go over there and you have to find this oracle, and you have to figure out nobody knows what the oracle is like. Oh, well, it turns out the oracle is an Archaic. And then, of course, to get past the Snow Peak Mountains, there's all these natural obstacles, there's probably a few skill challenges, and then there's probably going to be a bunch of monsters that you have to fight and all that kind of stuff. So it makes a nice long campaign arc just to get to the oracle and ask a question. And then when the Archaic gives you the answer, it's a cryptic thing that the PCs have to try to puzzle out. So that would set up well to have it in there. Another thing you could do is have this reskinned as some kind of elemental, with the force damage of their main attacks being replaced by cold, electrical, acid, or fire, depending on which elemental plane the reskinned monster either calls home or which plane they're attuned to. And if you want to make this monster the basis for a capstone enemy in a high-level campaign, why not give it both melee and spell attacks with each of its 8 arms? So it would certainly raise the CR of the monster, and depending on what damage or spell effects you choose, those attacks might put it on par with some of the most powerful foes in 5e. So let's say that each of its 8 arms, has a different spell attack. One can do, kind of make it in that way a little bit like the Beholder, except the Archaic could choose which one to use, and it can cast a spell with each arm, or maybe it can cast only one spell per round, but it can cast, you know, the same spell as many times in a row as it needs to, and the spells from each arm don't recharge. It's just it can do one of them every round. That would definitely make it a very high level CR monster. And then if it's going to be something that's a higher CR, you probably want to beef it up and give it a few more hit points, a couple hundred more hit points, something like that. Because if you're going to have level 20 characters fighting it, a level 20 party could dish out 200 points of damage in a single round relatively easily. So you'd want to make this thing tough enough that it stays around for a few rounds and gets to give the party a run for their money. All right, so that is our look at Archaics. I'm going to go over here to the chat and see if we see any questions. I don't see any questions right now. So I'm going to go into the wrap up, but then I will come back and look at the chat once again and find out what questions you all may have. All right, so once again, I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday. Tonight we've looked at the Archaic. We are back on a normal schedule this week. Had a few conflicts last week, so a couple of our games were postponed. And then Saturday night, we had players unexpectedly that had conflicts. So the Saturday night game got called as well. So we really didn't have any of the games this last week. But we should be back on for all of them this coming week. Thursday night at 8 p.m. we'll be playing Sword Coast Chronicles. Saturday at 7:30 p.m. is our Saturday Night Greyhawks, our 2nd edition game. And Sunday at 2 p.m. is our Planeswalking 5th edition game. You can find all those games streaming live both on Twitch and on YouTube. There is a Patreon out there. So if you want to help us do even more content, you can go over there and throw us a few bones. And then next week, school mascots from Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos. Now, each school has its own mascot, but those are creatures of a very common type, so we're just going to do all of them at the same time. And as we go through this Strixhaven source book, we will there will be times where we take a certain creature that is repeated across each school, and we will just deal with all of them, or a group of creatures that you will find, and we will deal with all of them at once instead of doing a separate show on each one. Alright, so let me go back to the... Hey, Doors of Here, how are you doing? So did you have any questions about our Archaic this evening? Or anybody else in the chat? Alright. Well, if... thank you, sir. Thank you. If there are no other questions, then I will go ahead and I will bring us back to the music. I'll bring that up a little bit, and I'll go and try to look to see if there's somebody that we can raid. And I will send you all to the end screen with a reminder to watch out for the monsters under the bed. So let's see if there's anybody streaming.